And again, welcome everyone to the ANC 3C Safe, Sustainable, and Equitable Transportation Committee meeting. I am going to paste the agenda in the chat, as well as where I will be taking minutes. As you all see, we have a large agenda. And I was talking to the other committee members here that I am in favor of, and I think everyone else is also in favor of meetings that end in an hour. So we're going to try and end at 8, but we also want to make sure everyone gets a chance to speak. But I will also ask that everyone please keep your comments succinct, and I might be rude and cut you off if we feel like we're going too long. But yeah, so with the intent of ending early, let's get started. So first, I just want to give a great update. We have 234 signatures on our petition. Mike, thank you for getting the CPCA to also write to WMATA. You also wrote to Mary Che, I think that also helped. So we also have her support. She sent a letter of support to also reinstating the bus line. That was she had support for other items too, but the L1 bus line in her letter was the one she talked about the longest. I will be drafting a letter. It will mostly be what's in the resolution because we can't say more than what's there, but I'll be drafting a letter and submitting the petition and the resolution to WMATA by February 15th. So yeah, just wanted to announce that, but wanted to give, if anyone had a question or anything they wanted to answer, or if while I'm drafting the resolution, if anyone would like, drafting the letter to WMATA, if anyone would like to look at it beyond the committee members. Okay, wonderful. So awesome. So that's good. So with that, Matt Kaywood just joined, and I'm actually going to hand it over to Matt, if that's okay, because the next agenda item is your item, which is Macomb Street Northwest safety issues. And I will share my screen so everyone can see the photo that Matt also sent.
Got it.
Matt, go ahead. Yeah.
Thanks, Saleh. Yeah, so this is a photo that was taken last week by me when a woman, an older driver, was heading down Macomb Street towards Connecticut from 34th, and somehow, and I wasn't there at the time, and I do not know what happened, but I'm sure excessive speed was involved. She managed to flip over her car. And this was about four doors down from our house. We're at 3207 Macomb's. So this was right, you can see the Tregerin entrance sign right there. So this is right around the entrance to Tregerin. And so fortunately, she was all right. She was sort of taken out by the EMTs, but then once they kind of stabilized her, she was fine and got up and started making calls and whatever. Obviously a little bit shaken. So I'm glad that she was fine. But this was obviously not the kind of thing that you would expect to happen on a, even more of a higher volume residential street in this neighborhood. Unfortunately, and the reason I reached out to Saleh and kind of put this on the agenda was because this is the second time there's been a high speed accident on our street in the last month. Previously, about 6 doors up from me, towards 33rd place, another driver just somehow lost control, hit a tree, bounced off, and then crashed into a car and totaled their car. So I think speed was involved there as well. So yeah, that's what's happened recently. But in terms of the sort of background, when I moved into this house, so on Macomb 4 years ago, we noticed very immediately that while Macomb Street has got a lot of things going for it, it also carried a lot of traffic, and we noticed our neighbors, for instance, told us, do not, if you park, don't leave your mirror out because it will get knocked off. You get like especially on this one side of the street, it will get knocked off. We replaced like one mirror per year, and so things like that, and just a lot of, we've noticed that a lot of excessive speeding, as a lot of this is driven by WIS. Trigger and drop off traffic, but just in general, there aren't a lot of east-west routes through Cleveland Park, and the ones that do, including Porter Street and Macomb, both carry a lot of, I'd say excessive speeding traffic for neighborhood streets. Macomb, and I looked at the data on DDOT's public crash website, Macomb seems to have a disproportionate number of crashes relative to even Porter. And I think a lot of that's probably driven by the fact that, Porter is a little bit of a curve. And I think that actually is sort of a natural traffic calming effect that kind of forces people to slow down a little bit. Whereas Macomb is just a straightaway. And on the stretch that Sully is pointing to between 34th, there's a stop sign at 33, but everyone rolls through it or just ignores it completely. And then everyone will just go on that straightaway until they get to Ross Place, which again is kind of an optional stop. So you got a lot of people going through all the way, through from 34th to Connecticut at a high velocity. Only when you get in the last part towards Connecticut does it really constrict from the cars and force people to slow down. So anyway, that's the background. There's a disproportionate number of crashes. There've just been two pretty huge crashes here. And the last thing I just want to say is that when back in April, when the Eaton School renovation was approaching completion, Eaton, as you know, is on the corner there at Macomb and 30 and 34th on the southeast corner. There was a DDOT meeting, and some of the things that DDOT's folks shared was that there actually were some things that could be done. Apparently the policy had changed. It used to be the case that you could not have speed bumps or other sort of, speed tables on a street that carried the volume like Macomb, but apparently there's, and again, I need to confirm this, and please speak up, share if you know more than I do about this, but apparently it is possible to have traffic calming devices installed. DDOT made some representations that they were going to look at that related to Eaton School being completed, and I have not heard a follow-up about that. So I would, what I would like us to sort of convene around is the possibility that we could use that and some of these as a way to encourage DDOT to be more proactive about this. They are working on other things on Macomb Street right now. There's a sidewalk improvement on the north side towards Connecticut that the neighborhood has been very well informed about, and that, among other things, it's for pedestrian safety. But the sort of excessive speed problem, as far as I know, there's nothing currently on the table about that. So I'll stop there, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Matt. And you are right. So if under the designation, Porter Street is like this street as well, you can't put a speed hump on there, but the traffic camera definitely is something we can look at. Margie.
I am incredibly sympathetic, and I live on Ordway Street, which also is a speedway. And I think the other issue that we're all dealing with, and I do not have a solution, is that our streets are all too narrow to have two-way traffic and two-sided parking. And I'm certainly not encouraging one-sided parking because people will go even faster. I just think we've got to figure out a way to look at this, if it's at all possible, holistically, so that we try and reduce the speed on all of our neighborhood streets. Ordway Street has Macomb is totally straight. Ordway has a lot of hills and bumps. So our stop sign at 30th and Ordway is ignored as much as the Macomb Street stop sign. So it's another example of maybe there's a way we can get DDOT to think about our neighborhood as a collection of streets, all of which need some work and some slowing down.
Thank you, Margie. Bob Ward, you're next.
Oh, hi. So I really liked Matt's presentation. The the stop signs on Macomb Street, both at Ross Place and at 33rd Place, are at best passing suggestions. And, so if cameras are great, if speed humps aren't an option, the idea of narrowing the roadway at those intersections to have pedestrian bump outs and crosswalks, just because at the stop signs, there are no parked cars because you can't park a car near a stop sign, but you can extend the sidewalk into the roadway so that it is, more obvious that this is a place where you need to pay attention and stop and slow down. So, but I like Margie's suggestion that this should be, we should look at our side streets holistically. I'm not as familiar with those streets on a daily basis, but because it is a straightaway and there's at least 2 city blocks there that are sort of unregulated and it's all downhill, you get incidents like what just happened in the photo you show. So anyhow, that's all I have.
Thank you, Bob. Jeffrey Francer. Sorry, I hope you
Yep.
pronounced your name.
Yep, no, that was very well done. And thanks very much for having this. I'm on Macomb, way up near the playground. So between 34th and 35th. And I just want to say that we have small kids, and there's plenty of small kids who walk on Macomb to go to school. And people blow by the stop sign that's on 35th and Macomb. And I, desperately think there should be speed bumps right near the playground before a kid gets hurt, like they have been in other parts of the city. And I have no idea why you could have speed bumps on Newark and not have them on Macomb. It makes absolutely no sense. And, I would support a resolution to, at the very least, inquire about that, especially given all the deaths, unfortunate, that have happened this year alone. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll go to Warren in a second, but I just want to clarify. I mean, I agree with you. It doesn't make sense to me either that humps aren't allowed on Porter and Macomb. It's just a DDOT designation that has existed for a long time, and we've tried to fight it actually quite a bit, and they just don't budge. On the other hand, I agree that we should put pressure on them. And the raised crosswalks, that's actually legislation that's passing through council right now. So I would actually like, if you all are able to email Mary Che saying that you support that and use Macomb Street as an example where we can't install speed humps, but we could do those sort of raised crosswalks and extended sidewalks if you needed to.
Yeah, happy to do that. And just one note on what you said is that the mayor has said that the ANCs should be empowered to recommend where there should be speed humps, and we should take her up on that. I think to the extent that there's agreement here, I haven't heard anybody speak against it. This is just pure safety. So thanks again. I'll be quiet now.
No.
And so is Councilmember Che a co-sponsor of that bill that I think that Nadeau put on the table? Is she sponsoring it?
No, well, so as far as I remember, it was Nadeau and Louis George who were co-sponsoring it, and Che asked for the hearing. So there was a hearing last week. But yeah, we should encourage Mary Che to do it. And Jeffrey, please don't apologize for speaking. This is what this meeting is for. So thank you. Warren.
Yeah, so my question relates to the conversation just ended. I understand why Porter cannot have speed humps because it's a bus route and they would be harmful to the buses. But what is the issue about Ordway and Macomb not having speed bumps? I'm a little less clear there.
Ordway can have speed humps. Macomb is designated as, and I forget which one it's called. It's not, the word isn't collector, but it's something else. Like DDOT has designations for roads that they figured out a long time ago. But yeah, like, I agree with you totally, Jeffrey, that we should definitely put pressure on the mayor and DDOT. I'll tell you right now, every commissioner on this call actually testified against the DDOT director being appointed because of how he's handled things, and yet council completely ignored that and let him become director anyway. So we're up against a little bit of a, no pun intended, uphill battle here. But I think there's things we can do, and putting pressure on Mary Che, I think you're absolutely right, and trying to like also put pressure on DDOT and the mayor is a really good idea.
Yeah, and I'll just say that like I'm not impressed, but a month ago, the ANC passed the resolution for my block, Cortlandt Place, to have speed humps. And I haven't even been, I've been working with I forget his name, but the guy who's the local Ward 3 coordinator. He hasn't even been able to put that resolution into the common file on our 311 TSI request. He says, well, there's some delays. He says, I mean, it's not going well. I'm just saying. But I think it requires a personal touch.
Robin?
Hi, thanks. So I came late, so I missed Matt Kaywood's presentation. I'm here to learn more about the Macomb Street, and I just was Matt at the end. I heard him say something about the renovations on Lower Macomb that Matt said something like that you've been well informed about. I just want to correct that. It was not a positive communication process with DDOT. So I don't know if that was discussed earlier. I think there's still a lot of confusion about what's happening there, but I just want to, I know sometimes we say people complain that they weren't informed when in fact there have been a lot of chances where, a lot of times where things have been communicated. I promise you, this was not well communicated. So there is a lot of confusion about that. So just maybe I misunderstood, but I just want to clarify that.
Thank you, Robin. Commissioner Faggots?
Yeah, to follow up on Warren about that resolution not being on file, it's interesting because I had a half an hour conversation with Christian the other day, who's the liaison I'm sure you were talking to, about my open TSI requests, including that one. And then like everything seemed fine and well, and he had a team on these things. But then like an hour later, he sends like all of these requests got closed out. So I have to follow up again, not to belabor this, but yeah, it's a challenge, and we try our best here, but it's like, so that covers my points on anything I added to the agenda, by the way. So there we go.
Okay. Oh wow.
Just to sort of jump off from Janelle's point there, I wonder, there's sort of two things that seem that are sort of percolating here. One idea is we call DDOT, on their offering or bluff or whatever it was about traffic calming related to Eden School, because it is very clear that traffic is not calm. And one thing I didn't mention, because the sort of neighborhood issues are more pertinent, but around the country and in our area and everywhere else, speeding is up, crashes and lethal crashes and pedestrian deaths are all up, right? Like this is not just like a one-off thing, with some like story. It's actually, the data show that because of partly the pandemic, but also other things like larger vehicles and distracted driving and all that, streets are actually becoming more dangerous. So I feel like it's it would be appropriate to ask DDOT for to do what they promised to investigate, at least as far as that goes. But the other thing that I think was interesting was I guess it was Bob's suggestion about perhaps doing sort of curb extensions, right, to shorten the crossing distance and also to slow traffic, right? Like, so there are a couple of corners there. One that's actually currently where there's currently sidewalk in the Ross Place intersection is actually covered in the area that's currently under discussion by DDOT, right? And so it'd be very easy for us as neighbors to say, DDOT, we want you to build that one out as a way of slowing down traffic at that intersection. Not going to slow down the fire trucks or whatever, but like, this is a way to calm traffic. And then also say, by the way, while you're doing that, we also, 33rd places. And that's actually the bigger problem, because that's where just everyone's, the street's relatively wide there, and people are just blowing through that one. And that was, where the people came from who crashed in these two situations.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. So I think there's, in my mind, again, there's like short-term things I think we can do that are very specific to Macomb that we should do. But I think what we're also hearing is there's longer term, more systemic issues at play that we should all work on and try and convince DDOT on. So let's try and come up with some short-term next steps. Matt and other Macomb residents, have you reached out to Commissioner McWood at all about this?
I have.
Okay, so I think what would help is, and feel free to like tell Commissioner McWood that I'm happy to like help with this as well, is if she can write a letter to Christian talking about what we can do on Macomb, which includes speed cameras, sort of the extended sidewalks and things like that, you know, and say that we discussed this at a committee and you know, the committee thinks it's a good idea. And if she can reach out to Christian and DDOT and get that rolling, and again, feel free to CC me. If not, like we can, you know, as a committee, we can also like reach out and do that. But just want to give Commissioner McWood, since it's her SMD, like the first stab at that. Go ahead, Commissioner Pikes, were you about to say something?
Yeah, she just sent us an email to our all ANC about what she's been working on, and it seems like it's a lot with more of MPD on enforcement with these issues, but also she's reached out to DDOT too. So she asked that we don't duplicate efforts, so we'll all be on the same page.
Perfect. So we should.
Is there a way we could, like, I don't think, I haven't seen her respond. Oh, she hasn't responded with that to me yet, but I can check. But is there a way we can, should I just email her and ask what she's doing?
Sure, yeah. I would email her and ask and say you brought it up at the committee and there's lots of support here and we're happy to help. But yeah, like I think in the short term, we should get something on Macomb, and I think we should use Eaton as a, you know, as an anchor as much as we can. In the longer term, including, you know, what Margie and others said, like, thinking about, you know, there's been suggestions that we should make all roads in Cleveland Park one way. And you know, I mean, I don't think who knows, right? Like we can, if we put the pressure, it might happen. But I do think eventually, like, I agree, like this two-way stuff on each of these roads is really, really bad. But yeah, so let's, in the long term, keep the conversation going on the systemic issues. I also put Mary Chay's email in the chat. I would encourage you all to email her, talk about Macomb and say speed humps aren't allowed there. How are we supposed to do this? And you please support Commissioner Nadeau and Commissioner Lewis George's legislation for the extended sidewalks. And yeah, and by the way, Mary Chay is also DDOT oversight, right? So I would bring up DDOT issues with her. I can tell you right now, and this is being recorded, DDOT will not listen to us. And frankly, like, you know, I don't know, it's really just the council member that we depend on now. So so anything that we want to put, please email Mary Chay, and then hopefully we can reconvene next time and see how some of this stuff is going. But Matt, please, yeah, email Commissioner McWood and then loop us in, and we'll be happy to help and move that.
Also testify at their oversight hearing that's coming up, which is another item on the agenda.
Yep.
Swale and I are definitely persona non grata in front of this committee at some level and in front of the agency. Because of our strong feelings, but we will probably sign up to testify again.
Anne, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm Ann Morrison, and I'm here because, full disclosure, that is my car that Matt took the picture of.
Why are you?
And I am
so happy you're okay.
I'm fine. I walked out. I walked away. I guess I am an older driver, but I don't consider myself that. I don't think I was. I don't want to go through all that because I have recommendations too. But as far as I know, I wasn't speeding. I was heading toward Connecticut, opposite Tregaron, and hit a car on that side. I mean, where Tregaron is on the right, heading that direction. And somehow my car kind of bounced over to have minor damage, a car on the other side, and it flipped over. I crawled out. I'm fine. I was a little shaken, no question, but I hung out, and people, including Matt, I'm sure, were so lovely. And, you know, that was that. So this got me super aware of some of the safety issues on Macomb, even though it wasn't high speed and another car was not coming in that direction. It was at night. In any event, among other things, the neighbors told me how many crashes there are. I was just opposite 3107, and they were lovely and took me in fact, for some tea, but said they hear crashes all the time. And to me, clearly speed is an issue, but my experience living just down and around the corner on Connecticut, and I used to use Macomb, is that it's really the narrowness with cars parked on both sides. You have to, as you all know, you have to pull over to let one by and then pull over another. So that exemplifies the problem. Now, speeding, I know less about, and hopefully in my case as well, but it is much too narrow. And my recommendation would be initially to try parking on one side. You all said that, or somebody said that that might encourage more speeding, but if we had some of the other measures, the speed humps and things, people wouldn't hit each other, which is, a serious problem. And I think because, as somebody said, because it's a straight shot, it's not like Ordway or Porter with curves. People go through there. I did, past tense. So the narrowness is one thing, combined with speed, as you said, and the parking. Now you've mentioned, and I originally thought, oh, one way, but do you think the neighbors would even support that at all, and coming around maybe one way, the other way on Newark and driving around 2 times to get to their own place? So I think we should start, it should start modestly, somewhat more modestly than that, and see what you can do. But certainly, thank you guys, anybody who was there. When I saw that picture on the agenda, I thought, God, I already had pictures. I was in the way of the cops, probably taking pictures myself. Cars totaled. Geico was phenomenal in terms of replacement value. So we move on from there, but it's never a good experience.
Well, and we're all so happy that you're okay. And I think you said it very appropriately. Like, this is a systemic issue. It's not, like we can say like, oh, individual this, individual that, but really it's like, there's just too many cars, and it's too narrow, and there's too much parking. I will say, with the last part that you said on removing parking modest, given our neighborhood, I don't think that's a modest proposal. I can imagine there being as much opposition, if not more, to removing parking than there is to making things one way. So, yeah, and I'm channeling Commissioner Paggett's here. I mean, we should get rid of all the cars from our neighborhood streets. Parking.
But let me just follow up on that. If the lower part of Macomb is more of the problem, I gather, if even it were that way, just that area, or even alternating and having parking, it wouldn't have fewer cars, but parking on the other side, farther up toward John Eaton, that might alleviate some of the problem. And most of these people are residents who have parking in back, don't they? Maybe not.
This is what people like me who live in apartment buildings always say. Like, but yeah, no, I mean, I think it's going to be a long conversation either way. It's not going to be easy. But thank you for bringing that up. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, a quick question. Sorry, I think you briefly mentioned maybe in the long term to think about making some of the narrow streets one way instead of going 2 ways, because that's really a good part of the systematic reason why we had lots of accidents. And I think Ms. Morrison said very appropriately that the neighbors might not want to that kind of inconvenience. On the other hand, I guess bearing some inconvenience might, if that will reduce accidents, make the street safer, that might not be a bad thing. So we have a couple of neighbors from the Macomb. I'm curious whether anyone would comment, whether people would think about making some of the streets one way.
So the practical issue with making Macomb one way, I mean, other than the safety issues and the DDOT, I'm sure would have concerns about where the traffic gets carried and so on, is just that it is almost 4 blocks long. So anyone who wanted to go anywhere in that area would have to go all the way around, which would induce a lot of additional traffic somewhere, right? Either Woodley or Newark or somewhere else. So for practical purposes, that's going to be a really hard one to turn into one way. I don't think that's feasible. some of the shorter streets in the neighborhood, might be a better candidate. And another thing that can potentially be done is, with some of the shorter streets is, you could add a bike lane or a counterflow bike lane, or you can sort of narrow things a little bit and turn it to one way. And that can help sort of slow down traffic, because ultimately you want to reduce the interactions, right? As we saw in Connecticut Avenue, you don't want people driving at high speed at each other. That's not good. But at the same time, if you end up widening the street because you're turning it one way, you actually induce excessive speeding, and that can cause pedestrian crashes and damage and other ways. So I think I don't think Macomb's the candidate for that, but we should be open to that in different areas.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Matt. It's very well thought.
Yeah. So I don't know how, and again, I think this is going to be a longer discussion that we probably can't have right now. So let's keep that, but I think we have good next steps to think about in terms of where we're going with this. So Matt, please reach out to Commissioner McWood. Let us know how we can help. And in the long term, I think we can keep this for a DDOT oversight hearing and stuff in thinking about our streets and what to do. Cool. So in the interest of what I started with, to try and keep us moving, I wanted to get to, we talked about pedestrians. So Mike, are you comfortable presenting some of your pedestrian survey from TBCA?
Yeah, sure. You ready for me?
Yep. Why don't you go right ahead?
Looks like that's up.
Yep.
Okay, great. I will try and be as quick as possible, and we can answer a couple of questions at the end if people have questions. Just wanted to share in this forum, this is a survey that we conducted over the last couple of weeks amongst CPCA members. And so first caveat being, this is not intended or represented to be representative of all of ANC 3C. This is solely representative of the CPCA members who responded. Having said that, we got about exactly 99 responses, which is very good turnout for one of our member surveys. We did a similar survey last year that I think we got about 65. So pretty good. It was open between January 26th and February 7th. And yeah, I mean, we've gotten, as I said, a high level of response, but also a lot of engagement from members. So this seems to be an issue that folks are paying attention to and are attuned to right now. You'll see there's a focus in here on 34th and the Reno Road corridor. It's come up a lot in CPCA setting, but I know it's also been an issue that's been raised here with the ANC Transportation Committee and I believe other places as well recently. So that was sort of the reason why we focused in on that as a particular issue of interest. I'll go through this pretty quickly. So if I go too fast, tell me to slow down. Which we should all, it was a good lesson in there for all of us as we move our way around Cleveland Park. Okay, just at the top, our members generally said they feel quite safe as pedestrians in Cleveland Park. On the whole, there are definitely some acute issues that we picked up in the course of the survey, but on balance, about 80% of our respondents said they feel at least fairly safe walking in the neighborhood. Having said that, about a third of all our respondents said that traffic safety concerns, restrict or limit their family's daily activities on a pretty routine basis. We had a kind of an open response question asking people to explain why, and the overwhelming concern was, of course, as you might guess, for vulnerable family members, children and elderly parents and the like. There were a few mentions about concerns specifically walking at night and not about personal safety so much as concerns about crossing key intersections in low visibility conditions. So we asked about a couple of the key corridors in the neighborhood, Connecticut, Wisconsin, and 34th and Reno. Wisconsin is viewed as being a bit safer than Connecticut, but both are viewed by the clear majority of our respondents as being at least fairly safe. Here's a quick deep dive on Connecticut. We asked an open response question that was basically just like, tell us if there are any particular trouble spots in the neighborhood that you want to raise a concern about. And the overwhelming number of responses to that question focused on specific crossings on Connecticut. And so sort of raises, I think, the suggestion people feel comfortable being pedestrians in Connecticut, but crossing Connecticut feels like a different experience. In general, respondents told us about the speed and density of traffic on Connecticut. But there were several very specific suggestions about the concern that folks have with northbound traffic making left-hand turns, unprotected left-hand turns from Connecticut onto on neighborhood streets, and that putting pedestrians either crossing Connecticut or in crosswalks crossing north-south parallel to Connecticut in jeopardy. All those left-hand turns, I believe, are all unprotected left-hand turns, and so people feel like drivers are making kind of frantic left-hand turns to squeeze in between traffic and make those turns, and that was dangerous for pedestrians. And then, as you can see here, the Quebec Porter Connecticut intersection is highlighted by our respondents as a real area of concern, described as being very confusing for both pedestrians and drivers, and that kind of some of the events puts pedestrians mostly at risk. Okay. We asked our members how they feel on both our like residential neighborhood streets and on the 34th/Reno Road corridor. As I said, it's been a point of discussion in this setting as well as others recently. So the good news is, overwhelmingly, our members said they feel very safe on the neighborhood streets. About 90% said they feel at least fairly safe walking on sort of the residential streets of Cleveland Park. That funny triangular intersection at 37th Porter in Idaho, and then of course Macomb, given recent events, were the only other kind of trouble spots that popped in the open responses. But then the bad news, of course, is the 34th Street Reno Road corridor. Only about 40% of our respondents said they feel at least fairly safe. So, I think it was well over 60 for both Wisconsin and Connecticut, 40% here. Nearly 20% of our respondents said they felt very unsafe on 34th Reno. So here's the side-by-side comparison of all those different corridors, and you can see Reno really stands out. Again, about 20% of our respondents rated the 34th Street Reno Road corridor as being very unsafe. By contrast, only 3% of people said the same about Wisconsin and Connecticut. So here's the deep dive on 34th Street in Reno. We actually asked our respondents to imagine walking the length of the corridor from Cathedral to Upton, which, for those of you who are not CPCA members, is CPCA's designated catchment boundary. And we asked them to rate each intersection based on how safe or dangerous they feel as a pedestrian. And it's really, I think, quite striking to see it in this granular view. Residents feel pretty safe walking that segment south of Macomb. There's the back-to-back lights, Woodley, Lowell, Macomb. That stacked up set of lighted intersections stands out as being very clearly felt as being the safest segment in that whole stretch. And then by contrast, the stretch between Ordway and Rodman, with the exception of Porter, which is lighted, stands out as feeling quite treacherous to people. We got a lot of analysis, I guess, in our survey as to why in the open response fields, people speculated about things like drivers speeding up and down the hills. It's obviously hillier and curvier in that section of the neighborhood. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes. There are a couple of crosswalks in that stretch where the crosswalks are actually only visible to drivers quite late. You're almost right on top of them. And then a couple of people said that both Newark and Ordway look and feel like they should be four-way stops, but aren't, which I thought was an interesting suggestion. And then a number of people also mentioned that the really narrow obstructed sidewalks along 34th, right where it turns into Reno, there between Porter and Rodman, enhance their sense of, I guess, vulnerability. Having spent a few years pushing strollers daily through that stretch, I can tell you, I can share that feeling. So highs and lows on this corridor. 34th and Woodley is considered to be, I think, the safest. About 80% of folks said they feel at least fairly safe there. It also that was the intersection that received the highest percentage of respondents rating it very safe, about 24%. Ironically, given the conversation that we just had, 34th and Macomb also really stands out as being considered to be quite safe. And I think it's interesting because it is such a high use intersection for pedestrians. It's obviously adjacent to school. As somebody said, it's just a couple houses down from the playground. So I think it's just notable that it scored so highly. More than 2/3 of our respondents said that 34th and Ordway was at least somewhat dangerous, which was the highest percentage. And it is, I was out walking it the other day. I mean, it is really striking to cross 34th Street at Ordway on I guess it would be the south side of that intersection. You can't see cars coming up 34th Street until they're almost right on top of you. More than 60% of respondents also said that Newark and then Quebec and Rodman are also at least somewhat dangerous. Again, there's like, it's hilly there. There's a big winding curve. A couple places where I think maybe leads to some confused interactions between drivers and pedestrians. Reno and Rodman, I live, just full disclosure, 2 houses down from Reno and Rodman, is viewed by respondents as being the most acutely dangerous corridor or intersection in the corridor. Nearly 30% of respondents rated it as very dangerous, which is the highest percentage. And then we asked about just kind of like general other issues, right? That affect folks' sense of safety and that might affect their mobility as pedestrians. 2 things really stood out. We had asked a question about bikes and scooters on the sidewalk. People took advantage of the open response questions to tell us a little bit more about that issue as well. It seems to be particularly a pain point on Connecticut, as one might expect, given proximity to the zoo and things like that. But several respondents also described this as an integrated problem, which I thought was interesting. A number of respondents essentially expressed sympathy with bicyclists in particular, who they said, I know that bikes don't feel safe riding in Connecticut and they feel forced onto the sidewalks, but it makes the sidewalks feel unsafe for me. So I think it's interesting that people see this as a holistic problem, or the symptom of a wider mobility problem, and not just bicyclists being something. The other issue that folks raised really quite routinely is the state essentially of the pedestrian infrastructure itself. A number of respondents mentioned things about the physical condition of the sidewalks and crosswalks themselves, tripping and stumbling hazards, roots that have uprooted sidewalk panels, overgrowth even on some streets, and lack of enforcement for maintaining clearance for pedestrians. And then there was quite a bit of discussion again about narrow and obstructed sidewalks. There are a couple of sidewalk corridors in the neighborhood where there are street lights literally in the middle of the sidewalks. The stretch on 34th and Reno was mentioned. Newark, of course, I think has kind of a similar situation. And so people indicated that there were a couple of places in the neighborhood where they almost felt like, as pedestrians, they had to walk out into the street, and that was treacherous, but it also just made the sense of being a pedestrian in the neighborhood somewhat unfriendly. And then, of course, as you might expect, respondents used the open response fields to suggest interventions. A lot of the things we've already discussed here, a lot of discussion about traffic calming measures, a lot of requests for speed bumps and more stop signs, generally a call to slow traffic down throughout the neighborhood, but also a call for more and better enforcement. And so, I mean, there were a number of calls specifically for red light cameras. And then I think, maybe it's just as a closing point, I think there was a sense that we picked up through some of the open response fields that people are concerned that the situation is going to get worse and more dangerous for pedestrians, given the disruption, the forthcoming disruption along Connecticut Avenue, and also the development on Wisconsin Avenue, which a couple of folks suggested was likely to change kind of traffic patterns and people's routines in terms of how and where they drive through the neighborhood. So I will stop there.
Cool. And
Questions?
Bob Ward has his hand up, so go ahead, Bob.
Your survey game is strong, Mike.
Thanks, Bob. That means a lot coming for you. I'll take it.
So quick question on this. I mean, this is really valuable stuff. And I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity to expand the audience to get sort of more of Cleveland Park to engage in this survey, to get more data? I think about, folks who live on our avenues who may not be as well represented in CPCA, to do this more broadly, because this is dynamite. I love it. And I'm gonna respond to it.
No, totally. I think it's a great idea. When we were working out the survey, we actually talked to Swale, and I think we kind of came to the conclusion we'll run it through CPCA first, just to take the pulse of our members and see where this lands, and then I think yeah, let's definitely have a conversation about how to throw this or something very much like it open to the wider community. Now that we've gotten sort of a first cut of insight.
Cool.
You had your hand up and you put it down, I guess. Anyone else? Oh, go ahead.
I'm happy to put it out in the Main Street Community Newsletter. It goes to 700 or 800 people in Cleveland Park. If you want to send it to me, if that's appropriate.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think what we'll do is we'll package this as the CPCA version of the survey. We're going to throw it on our website, share it with our members. But I see no reason why we couldn't use essentially the same survey tool to get perspectives from a larger cross section of the community. I'd love to do that. Yeah.
Eileen, and then Margie.
Hi, two questions related. One is, did you notice any difference in responses based on age or disability? And did you get any responses that talked about pedestrian signal timing?
We did not ask for demographic data for our members, and so I don't have crosstabs for you. There were a couple of mentions about signal time. There were a few very specific mentions about making sure that, particularly on Connecticut, signal timing was timed to allow, particularly for mobility limited and elderly pedestrians to make better use of those crossings. It was only a couple of mentions, so I didn't highlight it here, but definitely something that we logged as an issue.
Yeah, I think it is an issue, and it's one on Reno too, and 34th.
Great. Yeah, take note of that.
Margie?
The other issue that I don't remember the survey dealing with is the question of streetlights, because I think there is an enormous difference between how I feel walking the streets of the neighborhood during the day and at night. And Ordway Street is another example of how we are so underlit. In some ways, it's great because we don't have glaring LED lights coming into our houses. At the same time, that walking on Ordway Street at night is often pretty precarious and does increase a sense of danger. So perhaps if you expand it, you might want to ask a question or two about the difference between how people feel walking in the day and walking at night, or walking alone or walking in groups, just to to broaden it a little more. I think it's a really interesting survey. I did have to chuckle about how dangerous the Connecticut Porter Quebec Street intersection is, because when I was on the ANC, which is now at least 5 years ago, we spent a lot of time with DTOT, and they were going to completely reconfigure that intersection to make it much safer for pedestrians as well as for cars. And you can see how much success we had then. So while I keep fighting with DDOT, it's just, I feel like they're a serious brick wall for all of us to test our patience on.
Yeah, so I believe, Margie, that they are supposed to redo that intersection. And I think it was, and maybe someone else on here should know this, but I mean, I should know this as well. And like part of the streetscape project, but they are supposed to redo it as well. So, but yeah, I agree. It's still a fight. It's still not done yet. And so.
Margie, I love the suggestion
yeah,
about the day-night contrast and asking people about that. As I said before, a couple of people just freely mentioned that, particularly in response to the question about does traffic safety affect your daily routine? And a couple of people took advantage of the open response there to say, I won't cross Reno Road at this intersection or that intersection at night because there's not enough light and traffic doesn't see me until too late. But yeah, it would be interesting to study that more broadly across the whole neighborhood. Yeah. Thanks for the suggestion.
I'll quickly comment since you brought it up, and then we'll go to Matt and Bob. But Mike, I don't know what CPCA's next steps are, but I'll tell you that Commissioner McWood and I wrote a very pointed letter about the Newark and 34th intersection to DDOT. And so if you all do want to follow up, like we're happy to kind of like restart that thread. Of course, it's just an email thread. And the other thing I want to tell you is I walked with the mayor's representative that entire stretch of Reno Road, and he was so scared that he said that he was like, yeah. So that's another point of follow-up. So if you all are following up on this or want to do anything, like those 2 points, I'm happy to work with you and help you get those through.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of advocacy to come from this, we've not had those conversations internally yet. I mean, I think we wanted to get this pulled together and begin to have a conversation with you. I mean, I think your suggestion a couple of weeks ago after you did the Reno Avenue walk was that we advocate to get a real traffic study done on that corridor. I think that this gives us both both good cause to do it, but also some insight into where to focus that traffic study. So anyway, that strikes me as maybe the most obvious next step, but happy to take lead from ANC.
Oh, that's happy to work. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. My question, so first of all, Mike, great data. Really very interesting to see it visualized this way, and sort of, we'll see the topography in the perception of safety and unsafety. I was wondering if you had the ability to correlate that with like a actual DDOT crash data, like the one that I was visualizing, because perception of safety and safety are not the same thing. They're both important because perception of safety is what, again, like allows people to be mobile in this neighborhood at night, right, and go out and shop and do all the things they want to do. So it's super important. But I'm actually kind of curious because, like, there's certain places on this road where I feel really unsafe, but like just exposed, but maybe they're not the biggest problems.
Yeah, you called me out. That was the other caveat that I was supposed to make at the top that I forgot to. Is that this is perception only. So we haven't made an attempt to calibrate this against crash data and make no representation as to whether or not this data is representative of actual danger. It is only representative of our members' perceived sense of danger and vulnerability.
Mike, I put the data in the chat if you wanted to analyze it.
Thank you.
Of course, right?
Looks like Bob's got his, yeah.
Bob, are you still here? We can't hear you.
I'm here. Sorry. Yeah, no, I think just to Margie's point, I think, her good work and others like Susie Taylor, who worked on that streetscape plan, now so many years ago, it is coming to fruition. So it is part the Quebec and Porter and Connecticut will be part of the streetscape plan. We've got a diagram of it on our Cleveland Park cpsmartgrowth.com website on our recent newsletter. I'll see if I can find it and stick it in the chat, but it shows how that intersection is being redesigned, taking away all the slip lanes, both on Quebec and on Porter, and making it a much more pedestrian friendly intersection.
Thank you, Bob. Other questions? Eileen has a good comment about open data being for underestimating a lot of these things, which is unfortunately true with a bunch of traffic and car related stuff. Thank you, Eileen. Awesome. All right. Well, we are at 7:58, but I do want to give two more things. Well, three items, and the last third we'll do very quickly. But I know Naiwa wanted to bring up some Klingle Trail safety issues, Klingle Trail damage issues, and then Cassandra, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about Main Street stuff. So maybe Naiwa, if you want, I can share the photos and you can give us a small overview of the Klingle Trail issues.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So one of my neighbors, Christian Powers, has been working on this question about the damage recently to Klingle Valley Trail. So the trail was dedicated in June 2017. And unfortunately, in just 4 years, this is a beautiful trail that has been very widely used by many, got damaged. So there was a very large tree that came down from the zoo and fell on the trail. And you can see some benches were crashed. And then there was also part of the trail was crashed into. And Christine and some other neighbors have been working very hard since last year to try to get DDOT to do the repair work. Otherwise, the damage will continue to get worse and worse and will make the trail very unsafe for pedestrians and bicycles to use. And so she and several other neighbors have contacted DDOT numerous times to no avail. And she also contacted the National Park Service, put in a request in the DC 311 system, and contacted Council Member Mary Chay's office to seek assistance to get this damage repaired. And Mary Chay's office did find out from DDOT, and they got into some communications, and DDOT replied, they do not currently have a maintenance mechanism for the damaged porous asphalt. So that makes all of us, I feel, very sad. It's a beautiful trail, really deserves some good work to maintain. So it will continue to serve the community in the years to come. So Christine's comments, she urged the district to give DDOT the funding and staff they need to maintain the trails. And she also hopes that DDOT will be more responsive to the public, because she has been very disappointed not getting much of any useful response. And I would suggest that maybe we should, the committee should consider this issue as one of the topics we could go to the DDOT oversight hearing and pose some question. I think that in a way, this is a pretty basic budget issue. If we have built the trail, I believe the district spent $6 million to build this trail from what used to be the ruins from the old road. And the maintenance cost is not that much to keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Yeah, I think the last agenda item is thinking about what we do, if we do submit something and what we submit to DDOT. So yeah, I wouldn't mind including that. And I believe that your neighbor is also testifying at the DDOT hearing, right?
Yeah, I forgot to mention. Yeah, so she already signed up to testify, but I will hope that our committee's support would help make that issue more prominent.
Well, Naiwa, I think at a minimum, I think the committee can send at a minimum a letter on it. So maybe Naiwa, if one thing we could do is if you wanted to start a draft of what the committee could say, and it doesn't have to be long, just a paragraph. I think that'll be useful because then, depending on what our testimony looks like, we can always add that paragraph or those things in, unless someone disagrees or has any other ideas.
Sure, I'd be glad to do that.
Awesome. Thanks, Naiwa. Thanks for bringing it up. Cassandra.
I wanted to let you know that I was able to secure a PUDO for Cracked Eggery. I just have to hang the signs. I was hoping to get these plastic sleeves to protect them from the weather, but I'm just going to go ahead and hang what I have tomorrow. And then when I get the sleeves, so they have a spot right out in front. And then the other issues about the service lane, it seems, given all the uncertainty around the streetscape, it's not really a good use of time to speculate. So, but yeah, that's all. That's my report.
So for those of you that don't know what PUDOs are, they're pickup drop-off zones for that are on the main street. So the idea, Cassandra, correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea would be what you've done is like Cracked Eggery would now just have a pickup drop-off spot in front, so they're not. So people aren't double parking. They go there, they can stand there, pick up their food, and just leave for any delivery type stuff, right?
Yeah, it's mostly for like Uber Eats and things like. Idea being that people were just running in, getting food, and leaving. So, but I was only able to secure one spot. So, hopefully, it'll cut down on the double parking onto Connecticut Avenue, though.
Yeah. Awesome.
Very wishful thinking, Cassandra, but I like it.
So we are past 8. I did want to leave open time if anyone had anything else they wanted to bring up.
I have, oh, go ahead, Warren, if you got some.
I'll be very quick. I just, as a long-term thing, I'd like to put on our radar, if there's anything we can do with the way just WMATA's bazaar is just so behind the times. Like, the 7000 series trains are like 30 years behind Toronto that has articulated trains where you can just go from end to end. And of course, we all know that those, even though that outdated technology failed. I mean, 30 years ago, I could go to any street corner in Berlin where my brother lives and see clear signs of when the next bus is coming, right on the sign. You didn't have to do an app or anything. We still don't have these things. New York City has high-speed buses that go up and down 1st and 2nd Avenue. You could go the length of Connecticut Avenue from Cortlandt to Chevy Chase Circle in about 4 to 5 minutes with just three or four stops. We are just not investing the kind of money that other cities, and even in North America, let alone Europe, are doing. And I'm just, the Red Line is totally over capacity. Just before the pandemic, I bike to work, but people were telling me, they couldn't get on at Woodley Park. We need better bus service. We need much better train service. And I know it's kind of beyond our local remit, but I just wonder, how we're going to move to. I'm just very frustrated with our public transit infrastructure. It's just not there. I mean, and it doesn't seem like it's going there. I mean, they're talking about the 8000 series trains that are 40 years out of date, basically. So I don't know. I'm just putting it out there. It's kind of the end of the meeting, but maybe we could devote some time to a future session on the bigger issues.
Getting lots of nodding heads, Warren. I love the idea of just having an open discussion and like coming and strategizing. I mean, but yeah, no, thank you. Mike?
Thanks. Yeah, I love that idea. My personal wish list is I'd love to have at both of the metro entrances at the street level a sign that indicates digitally when the next train is going to be coming. This is not a tonight discussion either, but I wanted to raise the issue and maybe flag it for a future agenda. But a number of other metro stations are in the midst of renaming, rebranding. timed to coincide with the opening of the Silver Line, which of course will mean that WMATA will have to turn over Metro Rail's entire collateral program anyway. And there has been a lot of discussion over several years about getting the zoo added to Cleveland Park's metro station name as well. And so I just wanted to throw that out there, since again, several other stations are going through this process right now. There's going to be a collateral turnover. This might be the right time for us to strike.
So Mike, maybe you can find if, well, you or someone else if wanted to figure out like how we might be able to strike. I'll tell you two things. One, the stations that are changing names are in other states. And so those states are paying. So we have to, so they're gonna ask us that question, even though we're just like, hey, just slot us in. The other one is WMATA has some rule, which again, is not valid for other stations, but they don't want names overlapping. And so that's the other big thing I've come, at least like, is that even if we do somehow convince them to do it, they will not want to have zoo in two names, is what what people who've tried this before have said. Then again, I don't mind trying again. If we can find out, I mean, if you want, like, I can try and email Ann Chisholm and say, hey, is there any chance we can do this? But if there is a way, like, I'm happy to put like tons of things behind it.
Yeah, I think we should look into it anyway.
I'll email Ann. If you can find out, if you can do an independent thing of where else we should like strike, I think that'd be helpful. Yeah, like what Bob said, it's like $500,000. And if DDOT can't even, well, WMATA is not DDOT. WMATA is like its own beast, but yeah.
But my understanding about the cost is that if you were to change the name off cycle, but they're changing the name. If you're changing the name on cycle, they have to turn over every sign, every map and sign in the system already, because they're adding a new line. And several other stations are getting their names changed at the same time.
WMATA is run by economists. That answers what Warren says. So they believe in making money rather than actually serving the public, which is true. Like that's why they have like the ridership, the whole method of like this assigning is turned around. And I guarantee you, Mike, they will ask us for the money, even if they're like, oh yeah, we're doing it anyways. But yeah, I agree. No harm in trying. So we should totally do it. Janelle?
The signage thing is so painful to me. I responded so strongly in those survey things because I know the cost of them. And the last time they procured signage, they used the wrong font. And like, not only like was it a waste of time and money, it was like materials, and I was just cringe all over the place. And because I apparently enjoy self-harm or something, I watched some of the WMATA oversight hearing at Congress today. Whew. Yeah, don't do that. And yeah, I think it's being run loosely. It's like you're in a hole, stop digging, please. So yeah, I don't know how to go about even cracking that nut there. It's embarrassing though to have the nation's capital as like be this humiliating. And I work at a global firm, and people make fun of us all the time. So it's not great.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So let's work together and fix it. And I don't know how to do that.
Margie? Margie, you're on mute.
Sorry. Great meeting. Thank you. Two quick questions. How often are you planning on meeting, and have you set a sort of long-term agenda for the committee or short-term agenda? Sort of tell me what you're thinking about how it's all going to go.
So we plan on meeting second Wednesday of every month. And we have wonderful community members who are committee members now. This is the first for our ANC. So Warren, Mike, Tammy, and Naiwa have all joined. Margie, you're welcome to join as well. We're always looking for community members who can help out. And one of the things we wanted to start this committee with was like kind of setting rules and like ways of doing things, and also a long-term thing. We just haven't had the time because frankly, we've just been overwhelmed with people getting hit by cars, with like dangerous things. And so we're sort of in like very much like catch-up mode right now with all the things the community is experiencing. But I think I'm glad Warren brought up, like, let's think about these long-term things in terms of WMATA. I think today with Mike's survey, we got like a long-term kind of, start towards thinking about pedestrian safety. The other big thing that's coming up for us is the redesign of Connecticut Avenue. And so I imagine this committee is another vehicle to like be able to get community feedback and stuff on that. Cassandra is very helpful, like when she, that she joins these meetings to like really understand the business perspective and what's coming up there. So yeah, I think it's evolving a little bit, but I agree with you. It would be nice to have like, discussions of long-term vision.
And the one other thing I want to throw out is, and I don't want to discuss it, I just want to throw it out to pin it, is I think it's probably time for us to have a conversation about how people who drive cars and people who don't have cars can get along. Because there are lots of us in the neighborhood who do it all. And we just ought to figure out a way to do this in a congenial and collaborative manner, because we're really not each other's enemy, and we ought to figure out how to do it together. End of sermon and soapbox.
We can use this as a vehicle for that as well.
Great.
We don't tolerate any hatred, depend on your modality of choice. We can hate particular.
Thank you.
We can hate WMATA, but we don't hate trains or cars or buses. Cool. Any other last comments before I bring up the last agenda item, which shouldn't take too long? So the last agenda item is DDOT has an oversight hearing coming up on February 18th from noon to 6 p.m. Now, Janelle and I have testified at a lot of these, and frankly, I'll be honest, I am kind of burned out in testifying at DDOT hearings. We go in with a lot of data, a lot of information, and a lot of like, stories about people getting hit, like lots of things. And we come out of it with promises that are never kept. And so it is a little frustrating. However, I will say that sometimes it works. Like, Mike, like the Rodman Street bumps, like that's a perfect example. Like you say it enough times at a hearing and someone hears it and they're like, okay, fine, we're gonna go do that. And, I'm hoping the L1 bus is the same way. So there is a hearing coming up. I kind of wanted to get a feel of, if we do testify, what we include. Even if we don't testify, it might be nice just to send a written testimony in, even if none of us can make it in person. So kind of want to get a feel from everyone in the neighborhood on what kind of stuff they would like to see included if our committee was to testify. So Naiwa, thank you for including the Klingle Bridge, the Klingle Trail damage. I think we can include a paragraph on that. I think one of the things that I talking to other commissioners, I want to talk about is how slow DDOT is with all the projects in the neighborhood. So how slow they've been with Streetscape, how slow they are with now implementing Concept C, how just slow everything they're doing is just impacting us. So I think we can include a general thing on that. Wanted to check in other things. So we have to be a little mindful. I know you all want to talk about WMATA, but DDOT really can't do anything for WMATA, but we can talk about other things. Yeah, Naiwa, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'd like to make one more suggestion for a positive thing for DDOT. So a couple weeks ago, we had this terrible snowstorm that blocked off Klingle Valley Bridge for 3 days. That made life really miserable for many of my neighbors. And I believe for people who live near other streets, bridges also. And with some good work from Mary Shay's office, after 3 days, DDOT finally sent a crew over to clear the bridge and make it safe for pedestrians to walk. And then I think Mary Shay's office made a promise. They will continue to monitor the situation and keep it on everybody's radar. And it looks like the last couple of snowstorms, not as big as the one at the beginning of January, the crew came and salted the bridge pretty early, sometimes even before the snow started. I thought it would be good for us to send them a positive message to thank them for changing their behavior. It used to be it takes a long time for them to take care of sidewalks on on bridges. And now that they're doing the good thing, I think they deserve some compliments. And hopefully that will help keep them continue to do the same.
I think we can include positive things, and I always say positive stuff about their staff on the, like, that we directly interact with, like their bicycle program specialists are amazing and stuff. But yeah, we can say like, hey, this is an example where you all took feedback, so please take our feedback again.
Yeah,
Do it.
yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah. I also thought we could add like something about pedestrian safety and crashes in general and how difficult it is to get traffic calming on our neighborhood streets, and maybe bring up Reno and Macomb and all these streets and the stuff we talked about today. So that can be another item. Is there anything else? Would anyone want to testify at this hearing in person on Zoom? Commissioner Paget, would you testify on behalf of the committee? Would you testify on behalf of your as an ANC commissioner?
Oh, I'm not given enough time to testify on behalf of the entire neighborhood, I don't think. I can take bits and pieces, because are we given, no, we're not given extra time. We're a general member of the public. So it's 3 minutes.
No, commissioners are like representatives of their SMD, so you're given 5 minutes.
No, I think the one that I sent in today was like 3.
Oh, okay.
Although it was like, okay, that might not be the best example.
All right, so I think if everyone's okay with it, I think I'll start a draft, but like I said, I think we're all overstretched. I'll start a draft and circulate it to the committee. And maybe if people can start adding things and editing things. Now, at a minimum, we're sending your paragraph on Klingle. So at a minimum, we're gonna send that. And then if people, I'll send an email out with a Google Doc. If people wanna help write some other parts, maybe we can get something written and submitted. And then if I'm available or if someone's available during that time, we can put a person's name in to present. If not, then we'll just submit written testimony and that's it. Awesome. All right, only 20 minutes over. Getting better at this. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining, and hopefully we can keep this going. And yeah, hopefully we'll follow up on everything as well.
Thanks, Steve. That was a great meeting.
Great meeting.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.